this computer.
It's usually a red button.
Yeah, I think we got it. So welcome everybody to another exciting evening of our, I wish we could call them fireside chats. That would be fun. But the light table chat is what, the tradition and around the light table looking at old negatives and things like that. But the fireside, it's getting cold outside. I don't know where everybody's coming from. I know Shafkat is on. I mean, there's probably no snow in Hawaii, but it's been hitting pretty hard really quickly for a lot of folks. There went fall. So tonight, I think we were going to go through, pretty typical light table chat. I'm going to call it fireside chat. Watch me. Light table chat. And we're going to go through a few people showing some work. But first up, I wanted to just say that, wow, everybody's been, really doing some amazing work. And I think we have 4 or 5 galleries we're working on right now that are going to be posted. A lot of nice work coming in from the past holiday. And we wanted to be sure there's a lot of new people that have signed up to take part in this project. And there are some small things that we need everyone to do as they submit work and as they work on essays and submitting singles. And just remember that this project, we're trying to bring a daily look, a monthly look from your point of view from around the country into this project. And it's not just COVID-19 related, it's where we are as a society right now with the politics, social unrest, and where we're moving toward. And it's really important to be out there photographing and doing things. And it's dawned on us, it's been tough because of COVID-19, but just get out there, shoot, and submit. If you have any questions about how to submit images, it'd be really easy just to go back to the boydstation.org website, and there's an American Reimagined dropdown. And if you pull that dropdown down, it has the guidelines and the metrics we would like to have of all the work that gets submitted, and all the way down to how to caption and size of images and all that. But the most important thing, the image size, all that works out in the wash. The caption on each image in your IPTC field is absolutely the most important thing that you can add to each of your images. And by doing that, it just goes into the archive and it becomes searchable. And so complete and accurate captions are really important, even if some of the work isn't going to be used at a later date in a gallery. We need everything captioned. And that said, when you do submit, don't worry about just submitting what you think is your best work. You have a group of editors here who are looking at this work as it comes in. So feel free to submit more than you think is your best work, and let the editors help you decide, cull through your images and find those nuggets that you didn't realize you had. So over submit, but just remember, when you do submit your work, have it captioned. I think that if you look at the Boyd Station site, you'll see the notice there that tells you how to submit and what you need to do. So I would really recommend doing that right when you get ready to resubmit some work. I do see a lot of new names, a lot of new folks have signed up and they're here tonight, so welcome. And we do these light table chats periodically, and we had hoped to do them, once or twice a month. And I think we've been keeping pretty close to that schedule, but the holidays and different things such as elections come up and sort of take our time. But I don't know. Anybody have any questions before we go into this? I see a lot of new faces before we get jumping off onto our talk tonight. But anybody have any questions before we get going? None? All right. Well, as we're going, this is a kind of an event where, don't stay silent. I would recommend, as people are chatting here and showing work, bring your questions, bring your comments to the front of the table. Turn your microphone on and jump right into the conversation. Feel free. All right. First up, we have a lot of, I guess, big events in our timeline for 2020 coming up very soon. We just had Thanksgiving, and there was some great work being submitted from that into the submission incoming folders. But we do have Christmas coming up. We have a season of where is COVID taking us during the holidays? Where is the political and the social makeup of our society right now taking us during the holidays? So that's going to be really important to document for this project. And Michael Keating's going to take us through a couple, I guess, scenarios or things to look at, and maybe how to address getting your foot in the door to document some of this stuff. And he's going to kind of run us through the I guess the pattern of how to make these images happen. Do you want to jump in, Michael?
Sure. So I've been in this business long enough to relate that I had a photo editor who ran the photo desk one time when we used to go out and just look for wild art, crazy feature pictures, and he said he wanted to up the quantity and the quality of what we were doing, and so that it had some significance. And I said, well, how would you find something like that? It doesn't just fall out of the sky. And he threw the yellow pages at me, and he said, start making calls. So I'm not going to throw the yellow pages tonight, but I took the liberty, if I may, and since Jack gave me the time, I guess I have the permission to kind of run you through a process that I went through and did when I was working, and still do to a certain extent whenever I'm looking for something interesting to photograph. And having just finished a book that was published about Indiana high school basketball gymnasiums, I can tell you that research was as important to me and my partner, Chris Smith, who participated in that project, as it was the execution in the field. Knowing where to go, why to go there, who we were going to see, and what we hoped to accomplish, and being prepared was paramount to our success. So I simply took the liberty here, knowing that we have some people in Georgia, and I'm not sure if anybody's here tonight who has a familiarity with that. But this was sort of my workflow to find something to photograph. So I obviously picked a very easy one. I picked Santa Claus, okay? Because it's going to be different. We're either going to have a plexiglass. We definitely are not going to hold any kids on our knees. There's still going to be pictures to be made. It's a tradition. There's so much that surrounds it, and it's so very, and in many ways, the way we approach it in our country is kind of uniquely American. It's the go tell the guy what you want, and then he's going to drop it down your chimney at night, right? So in order to find something, we all thought, and Pete Maravich mentioned this the other day, he says, well, it's not like you can go out to the local mall and go in and photograph Santa and kids in line and little kids with masks and who knows what you're going to see, because that's going to require permission. It's going to require permission from the watchdogs that are running the little camera stand, that they don't want you making snaps on the side and taking away from their profit potential if there's a picture of their kid with Santa, and also the idea of permission to be able to go into a mall and make photographs. So I figured what we'll do is we'll go around the edge of some events and see how we might find things that were going on. And so in my research, I thought, think small. Don't think the big picture. Don't think the big mall. Don't think the Christmas parade or the big department store kind of thing. But go around the edge. Look for small festivals. Look for little simple things that churches might do, and you find these on the internet. You can, these little calendars of events. So I go to Macon, Georgia, and I say, okay, so let's see what to do. Events Christmas events in and around Macon, Georgia. So starting on December the 5th. And so I find, all these little things and I print them out. And they're going to have an outdoor market someplace. Well, now that's like a special invite for you to just simply show up. You've got a camera, you're kind of like everybody else. You don't have to have a special permission to walk on the sidewalk. You don't have to have a special permission to photograph people that are in public. If you want to ask, or you made a nice picture and you want to ask someone's name, do that. Show them the photo. Say, hey, I'd be glad to email it to you, or something like that. And sort of, use your charm and your skills to help break down some of those barriers. There are some other things too that you can do. Look for places that you might not normally think Santa might show up, like at Shane's Rib Shack. Shane Rib Shack is going to have dinner with Santa, or lunch with Santa and Mrs. Claus. And up in Xenia, Ohio, which was another place that I found, you always have the potential up in Xenia and in Yellow Springs, which is just north of there, of maybe running into Dave Chappelle, who lives there and walks around on the street with his kids. And God knows what a photo of that might look like. But so anyway, what I'm saying is that don't necessarily look to go in and score big in a place where you are automatically going to be singled out. Oh, there's a photographer over there. What's he doing, or what's she doing? And to think small. Now, the best one of all, and I'm glad that Galen is here, because I think I stumbled onto a pretty good story. There's a group in Ohio called the Buckeye Santas. And one of the co-founding members of the Buckeye Santas died the first week of November. It did not say what Ricky Baldwin from Columbus died of, but he's right in the profile that I'll wager that Santa Claus may have died from COVID-related illness. And there is a huge group in Ohio called the Buckeye Santas. We kicked some ideas around the other day when we were talking in our Tuesday meeting. Now, what are you looking for? Well, maybe you could ask, what's Santa do when he gears up? What's Santa do when he finishes a shift of being Santa? Or is a Santa for hire? Does he go back to the car and sanitize everything and get the spray out and spray his suit? Those are the kinds of pictures that indicate, at least in my mind, and these may seem simplistic to you, but they do communicate what we're going through and how people are affected by these times. So I offer these up merely as a suggestion to get out there and dig, look in the community newspapers. The strength of the stories that are being told by the people that are participating in this project, the really strong stories come from the local level. They tell the story of how people are dealing. And you need to not go farther than to look at Tina Russell's work. She really didn't leave the confines of a family home and has told us a great story. And I think that we can find those kinds of stories that relate to the holidays and traditions. I'm sure that everybody will be impacted by that sort of thing. And it certainly is centered around a significant piece of Americana with the way that we celebrate our holidays. The second aspect, and I really hope that some of you will start kicking in here with this, is that we were talking about the idea, and Charlie Borst mentioned this the other day in a meeting. He said, let's not forget what Meghan Markle said, how glad she was that somebody asked if she was okay with regard to her living sort of in a life in a bubble. And then, of course, she shared recently the news of a miscarriage, and was able to talk about going through that, and became an empathetic character And then I think that all of this, the way that we're trying to tell these stories about how people are struggling with this, really taxes our abilities to be empathetic. Margaret Hetzels, who is with us tonight, who's writing for MPPA Magazine, a story about the Boyd Station project. She and I were discussing some things the other day, and she said uh, she thinks that the people who are best suited to tell these stories and to have the most success are people who can be empathetic with the people that we are photographing, the people that we are talking to. And I think that's a key to breaking down some barriers and getting some pictures that become much more intimate and give us a real sense of the struggle that people are going through. So with regard to asking, hey, are you okay? And we should be asking that of each other. And I think maybe it's even okay to document some of the things that you might be going through yourself. These are simply ideas. These are not assignments. This is, you got to do this, you've got to do that. But I think that we need to think in creative ways to tell our story. And if we're feeling out of touch, maybe there's a way to write an essay with that, a short essay, maybe 250 words, and photograph little details that depict that show that loneliness and things like that. So I hope some others here will kick in. There's all sorts of subjects like survivor guilt, people that are going it alone, people working from home, people that are simply missing their friends. I'm sure that everybody out here that's on this screen in front of me, along with most everybody else, is darn tired of missing their friends and the close associates that they're used to seeing. And I'm not talking about running up and hugging them, but just simply being able to say hi to them in person as opposed to doing it over a Zoom call. So the numbers of people that are starting to struggle with mental issues through all of this are definitely ticking up. In March, they projected it at about 23% of the people. By August, it was over 50%. And the most recent one that I could find was in November, that nearly 70% of the people that responded in a fairly scientific collection of process of data were saying that they were starting to have some mental issues, whether it was depression or anxiety or loneliness, whatever. So I think that those are all fair game and ways that we can think about making photographs and developing stories going forward. So that's my pep talk, and I didn't have to throw yellow pages at anybody.
Does everyone really understand the month of December is usually a difficult month for a lot of people? They're just overwhelmed with, oh, I got to put a holiday gathering together. I got to work. I got to get presents. How am I going to afford presents? I mean, that's going to be a big deal this year. A lot of people still not working. A lot of people have sick parents they're not going to be able to see, or grandparents. And this is an important aspect that we have an opportunity to delve into here. And there's an opportunity right now to jump in on this and start. I mean, I saw a number of things today just cruising around Facebook of my little social circle, and restaurant owners that I know who are, I guess, venting on Facebook because they have nowhere else to vent because they can't see or meet their friends. And they're just opening up about how their business is struggling, how their lives is struggling. And I think if you just look around in your realm of people that you see in your social media circles or other groups, you might stumble onto some of these ideas or these stories that you could possibly jump on. It's an important thing to think about, and it's not something you're just going to be able to jump in 5 minutes and walk away from. But it's really important. And as you guys have seen, we've published and displayed some of these essays in a way, and I hope you all recognize that your work is seen, and bringing these small essays to the table and we can put them up on the site has a lot of walking ability for your work to be seen out there. So jump in there and go after it. The idea about Santa, especially, making that picture of Santa spraying down his outfit when he's getting in the car, you're definitely not going to make that in the mall at, like with everyone else watching him come and go. You're going to have to make a relationship. So Michael brought this up. Make a contact with a Santa and just say, I'm going to go spend a day with Santa. I'm going to go spend a day with you, not just at the mall or at the firehouse. I'm going to get up with you in the morning and watch you pack your car, what you have to do, throwing your handy wipes in the car or in your bag. So that's where the photos are. The photos are really behind the scenes mostly. But he is going to be under glass or partitions and everything else. So what words do you have, Stephen Crowley? Anything? Flip your mic on.
Well, let me come back to it. I mean, I'm thinking of things that aren't easy to get to right now, but I mean, they canceled SantaCon, and I know some cities had SantaCons, and and then there's a cynical edge to Christmas in particular, the holidays, which is out there. It's really around Washington, D.C., which I once did a whole picture story that was very cynical about the way the holidays were treated around Washington, D.C. And it was so cynical, the Times wouldn't run it. So that's sort of an interesting. And then, then there's, but I'll have to come back to that.
What'd you have to say,
I have an
Charlie?
example. What's that?
Charlie had something to offer here.
Well, two things. One, I don't want to encourage sympathy porn here, but I would encourage everyone to just swing by the graveyards and see what's going on, because this is a time when people commemorate lost family members, especially if they're newly buried family members. But the other one is it's a good note that Matt Schiffler just put out in a little text. Matt, you want to talk about what you just sent out?
Yeah, I mean, at least I'm in Ohio at Cleveland, and for Cleveland residents, their eviction moratorium runs out. So,
Oh, wow.
That's right.
I'm really nervous about what people are going to be doing at the end of the month, especially. I think it runs out on the 31st. So
And that's for everybody. That's not just Ohio.
Okay, that's federally.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm kind of keeping an eye out on that. There's probably going to be some homeless issues going on, and Ohio unemployment, and I think that's federally too, also runs out at the end of the month. So people are really going to be struggling.
And what a month for people to be struggling, right? I mean, it's just insult upon injury.
So the hard part is going to be finding a person or the people that are affected by this. And that's where a good journalist is always just pounding his contacts, but mostly looking on sites that lend aid. Find people, reach out to folks at different organizations that maybe are sponsoring people, or churches that are offering money for people that can't afford to pay their rent for the next 2 months. That's where you're going to find a sympathetic ear to get you into the door of a subject and make photographs to illustrate that story. So start reaching out now, start looking for those situations. That's why this meeting of minds every time we get together is so good, because you bring these ideas up on December 3rd or 2nd, whatever it is. And wow, I'm glad I thought about that now and can act on it and go forward, next couple of weeks trying to find somebody to work on that story at the end of the month. So that's a great idea.
Jack, I also wanted to add, and I don't know, maybe a lot of people do this, don't do this. I find it somewhat helpful, sometimes overwhelmingly useless, but Google Alerts are a great way to pair up a couple of words together when you're looking for something in particular, but might not have an angle on it, or just also knock on doors. Speaking of doors, I was looking for this earlier, Michael. This is my favorite type of feature photography. And it's just the most mundane stuff. So I don't know. I just feel like people should not just look for COVID stuff.
Where'd you find that?
I stole it from Barb's. Don't
okay.
She let me borrow it. And along the lines of not wanting to do sympathy porn, but at the same time, it's important stuff. I look at funeral homes in the area. I know that Ohio had to bring in their first refrigerator truck to store. Unfortunately, people had passed away. I don't remember what town it was. And the Thanksgiving spike is just about to hit here. And I think it's worth having an ethical discussion at some point as to what stories should be done when you're not working for a publication, the balance of public safety. And there aren't any clear answers. You know, I love to bring up problems that have no answers, but these present great times for like day in the life of a nurse if you can talk your way into a hospital and stuff like that. But at the same time, you know, then you have to walk the line of, should I be telling this story or should I not, depending on.
I think each of you has the ability to go into a situation and tell a story and find a subject and tell a story, important story. And not so much, you know, thinking that, oh, I don't have anybody that's going to publish this. I mean, go shoot an amazing story and put it out there and make somebody publish it. Someone's going to see this work and want to publish it. So whether or not it's shot for somebody you work for or somebody you're going to take this work during this time and take it out and promote it yourself. I mean, that's what a lot of freelance photographers do. I mean, Pete and the American Reportage folks, they shoot a lot of projects that just are passionate projects for them. And the stuff goes up on their collective and suddenly the New York Times wants to publish it or the Washington Post or NPR. And there's lots of offerings out there for you. So shoot, definitely shoot.
I mean, I can speak to a photograph that Pete Maravich took. He went to CVS last month and to pick up something, and he noticed that there was a no COVID vaccines available at this store sign. And he just shot it with his iPhone and put it on his Instagram and got a call the next day from the Washington Post asking if they could license the photograph. So that's the kind of, you know, kismet that can happen when you're thinking.
Every day, every newspaper right now is looking for some sort of generic COVID lines, signs, people waiting, people's places closed, takeout only. There's an endless supply, but yet, you know, finding something new and fresh every day can be really difficult. So those little details and iconic things you sometimes don't think to shoot, but they're so important.
So I'm going to see if this works. Can you see this? Does this show up?
Yeah.
Okay, we all know that Hallmark is the card company, right? They now are marketing face masks.
Wow.
Saw it in the store today. That's the other thing too. The best camera you have is the camera you have, right? This phone, these cameras, they make great photos, and that's a nice way to get intimacy in a scene where if you get your big camera box out and you've got your 70 to 200 zoom on it, that kind of makes you look sort of like you're on fire to most people. So, you know, maybe a better way to work sometime in a sensitive or a quiet situation is to use the iPhone or whatever, or the Samsung. Is it Galaxy, the good one?
Well, and if Michael, if I can piggyback on your presentation, I mean, if you're in a shopping mall and you see a Santa with a plastic face mask on and you take it with your iPhone, nobody's gonna push back on you like taking a picture with that because you look just like everybody else photographing the scene.
That's right.
And if you can get a little quote from each of these Santas to say, what are you hearing differently this year that you didn't from the children that you didn't hear in previous years, that might help drive the narrative.
I mean, if everybody's out and just looking for Santas, that's great. I would look for, personally, I'm going to go after the angle of just spending time with Santa, and the images are going to be away from the kids and all that. That's going to be important. But I'm really interested in, will there be malls open? And that is something that in places like Ohio, I think there will be. And there will be the normal. And there may very well be the normal of kids, families without masks. I know malls and others will probably mandate mask use and things like that, but will people adhere to this? you're seeing that in a lot of places where people just, no, I refuse. So could you imagine, an unmasked kid going up to Santa who's beyond plexiglass, and Santa's like, no, 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 you can't come up. There's going to be some issues, and probably some pretty amazing pictures for the people that are in the right place at the right time.
And live nativity scenes, if you can find the angel Gabriel with a mask on, then you've struck gold.
Oh my gosh. Will the mule and donkey have to wear masks? I don't
Okay.
know. All right.
I
But
digress.
we haven't talked a lot about the aspect of where your work from this project, or most of you are emerging or college photographers, and I would work at every project with the mindset of a lot of freelancers around town here in DC. They're scrambling, and everything they do is done to promote themselves and to possibly publish, and i.e. get some cash. And I would recommend everything you do is you set yourself up for somebody to look at it, and you have basically, shovel ready stories to go to whoever's asking you for the possibility of publishing your work. And just that's your goal, to have a story, to have this essay that will just, make people start a bidding war for your work. I had a buddy of mine. Go
And
ahead.
Jack, if I can just jump in, I mean, that's the value of this group especially, is none of you should feel shy about pinging us, one of us, all of us. Is this a legit story? Or here's a story I worked on. What do you think? Who can I pitch it to? Because, between me, Molly, Michael, Jack, Pete, Steve, I mean, we all know people in the industry, and we're just dying to give you feedback and help you out.
Yeah.
Get some dollars in your pocket.
And I mean, this is where you hone those skills too. If you're sitting there, basically spinning your gears and like, man, what should I go out and shoot? And it is tough. So we all know right now during the pandemic, it is in all of our minds tough to go out and put yourself out there in a safe and smart way for yourselves. You don't want to be just wandering around out into a throng of 20,000 people that don't have masks at a rally in DC. Some of us do. I'm guilty of it. You do what you can, but that's the level of willingness I'm allowing myself to do. But others, I mean, don't feel bad that you safe distance. If there's something happening, you put yourself in the right position to not put yourself into harm's way. But I know it's difficult to get out there, and a lot of us have just been, I should be out there. I should be out there. And over these last few months, since this started back in March, I think a lot of people, we've sat down and getting nervous and wanting to get out there, but is this the right time? So, it's up to you, but you still can't do the idea of what Michael's been bringing up. If you got your iPhone and you're at the store getting milk, make those pictures or this and that. So always something to think about. I'm going after a Santa, that's for sure. I'm going to do something.
Well,
We should have a Santa contest.
okay. Tomorrow night, I'm going out to do two things. I'm going out to do dining under plastic, because that's the big thing that's happening now. Restaurants are building two-sided tents, and they're putting heaters underneath of them. Have they thought about the Hindenburg? I'm not sure. It's an accident eventually will happen, but there's dining under plastic. And the second thing I'm going out for is something I've continually tried to do. In Kentucky, for some strange reason, they said they wanted to turn on green lights to signify the passing of all those people that have died over the course of the virus affecting Kentuckians as a remembrance. And I just today found my favorite Christmas funeral home, which is in a small town near here, near it's in northern Kentucky, near Cincinnati. And they have their Christmas decorations up along with their green spotlights to honor the COVID, those people who've passed. And just passing by there this evening, just looking at the at the interesting contrast in the festiveness of the candles in the window and the green lights. It's just something to look at. And maybe it'll make a picture, maybe it won't. But you have to try, and you don't make pictures staying at home.
Yeah, just remember that, it's an important part of the season, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, but not just Christmas, but New Year's Eve, and what's going to happen for New Year's Eve. And we've asked everybody to look back in their files and see if they've shot anything from the 2019 to 2020 New Year's Eve, and when things were normal, and then see how that's going to be different this year with New Year's Eve and going into the New Year's, and who's out making those photographs, especially if anybody's on campus. But I think a lot of people are going to be home, not a lot of people on campus, especially over the holidays. But if you're out there, make those pictures. These are important pictures right now.
Jack, I was also going to add, I may be way off. I think I'm right looking at the calendar. It's Advent and coming up on Hanukkah. And those are, look at religion. And I mean, that's fueled a lot of cases, and it's also fueled a lot of conversation, and how people are going about their religious activities is probably a big thing to check in on too.
Yeah, I mean, especially folks that are just not adhering to state or the guidelines, CDC guidelines. That's a whole interesting story right there, especially in New York and very traditional religious portions of our society.
Hey, I just quick question from Molly on the pre-pandemic thing. I've been meaning to ask this a few times. Are we talking about New Year's Eve of last year and forward only? Or are we looking at also work prior to like this time last year or October? Because, there just wasn't a lot of shooting involved for me, at least in that January. It's a hiatus. Sleep.
Well, I guess we're really considering it beginning from 2020, but probably obviously the project is probably going to go beyond 2020. So
I was just curious because I hadn't asked.
Yeah, I mean, it would be important to show if we're going to do this year in review project, or this pandemic season. It's sort of important to show the arc of from normal to crazy, and also all of the sort of dips and peaks in the whole range of what's gone on in this last year. So still really looking for images where we do have a few, but where people were just living their life normally, gathering, partying. There's one image of people singing karaoke, and that's obviously something that people aren't doing now. But the more you can think of things like that might be in your archive, that would be really helpful.
But you don't want anything from before, so nothing 2019. I just want to make sure I got that right.
I mean, I guess
not really. I think it's really from this. We can show the things from 2020 on at the very start in January and December prior, but the project really started with the COVID, kicking in full strength in March. But we'll continue on through the New Year's and then into 2021 with this project. That's the focus. Well, any other questions or any other comments on, the mood of everybody over this holiday season or Christmas and chasing Santas down through the streets of America?
Yeah, the only other news bit I would toss out there is that I saw Joe Biden is going to give an interview tonight on CNN where he's going to announce that in the first 100 days, he's going to ask people to wear masks, for everybody in the country to wear masks for the first 100 days after his swearing in. So I'd start thinking about how that might look in your communities, colleges, towns,
Yeah.
where you're hanging out.
There might be some mask revolutions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There already are.
Yeah.
And keep your eye out too, because the runoff elections in Georgia, that's going to be contentious and crazy leading up to it in January. Plus everything else that's going on, I think it's just going to continue to escalate through the season because a lot of people, that mood. Okay, we bring that up again. The mood. Where is the mood right now? And half of our population is pretty much on one side of the fence, and the other half is on the other. So the mood is, volatile in some areas. So
Well, and
keep in mind.
this is where I wish that I had followed Michael's advice and just camped out in a place at the front of my subdivision. It's a big farm. It's a current Angus dairy cattle farm, and the owner of the farm has had huge Trump for president banners blanketing the fence and flags. And I went out this afternoon to run an errand, and he'd taken them all down. But I wish I'd been there just to see him like stripping the signs off the fences and taking the flags down.
Oh,
I mean,
that's been remarkable.
It would have been a great bookmark to what this campaign and this election.
I've been wondering about that too, because now that it's sort of clarified that he's a loser, people are going to be taking those signs down.
Yeah.
So I've been waiting to see that happen as well. It's a good idea.
Molly, there are almost as many Trump supporters as there are Biden supporters. I don't think those signs are ever coming down.
Well, Michael, they did in my neighborhood.
Oh,
So-
I know. There are going to be some. It amazes me what I'm still seeing in the neighborhood where I live. It surprises me every day. There's no reason, but we still have Trump, Pence, and Pray for America signs up in front of.
My next door neighbor just put up red, white, and blue buntings and then lined them with black drape.
Oh my,
Like,
Well, the other thing to look for is upside down flags, because there's
Yep. I've seen those.
there are people who fly those as a sign of a nation in distress.
Yeah, I know in Pennsylvania, driving through there recently, the election hasn't ended. So in many places right now, the election is not over.
And that's something to think about too, is the main street that splits town, like, is it divided by Trump and Biden? Is it divided by poverty, non-poverty? Like, think about the juxtapositions of your communities and where the divides are and what the divides are.
Yep.
Hey, Matt, you're kind of on fire with ideas here. The idea of a Trump sign in a trash can is a great idea. I mean, look for that.
Yeah. But I mean, if you can, the idea of someone out there literally taking their signs down, that brings up an aspect. Again, we were talking about finding that Santa, finding that person who is not coping well with the holidays. That's doing a little homework. And back in the day when I had to cruise around every day and find that feature image that had to be on A1 the next day in our small little paper that I worked at, you had a notebook, and you knew when the sun was just right on the side of that car wash down in one part of town, and you said, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, there's usually somebody down there, and if that light's just right on October 31st, I'm going to be out there camping out, waiting for that person on October 31st to show up and wash their car. And I just had a running list of places and things to wait for. As I drove around, I would see a picturesque scene, but no people. And you could sit there and wait, but that's a waste of time. I would, call somebody like, hey, when are you guys going to change that bell or clean that window up there on that bell tower? Give me a call when you're going to change the clock back to daylight savings time on that big church steeple. And they would inevitably call you, and you'd be there waiting to take that picture. So it's just a matter of getting out there and finding those sources and finding those contacts, and not just spinning your wheels, which I did a lot, of just driving hundreds and hundreds of miles looking for that feature photo, when guys like Eric Albrecht and others from Ohio they would have a notebook of contacts, and they would call them like, hey, we're moving the cows today, or we're burning that big pile of rubble, and boom, he would make these amazing feature photos every day. Like, how does he do that?
Or when the Amish kids were going to jump on the trampoline with the cornfield in the background. Yes.
Well, just be afraid of not manipulating reality, right? I mean, Michael, you and Jack, you probably know the name Tom Harding. He gave a lecture at the American Press Institute when I was there as a photo editor. He asked all the photographers in in the audience to participate in this conversation. It was like, so you're driving down a country road and you're responsible for making the feature picture that's going to go on A1. You need that feature picture for today. And you go by a hayfield and you see a kid running from roll to roll of rolled up hay. But by the time you turn your car around and get your camera out and put it up to your face, he's off the rolls of hay. So how many of you would ask him to get back on the rolls of hay just so you could make the picture? Because, you know, he was on the rolls of hay, so it's not really manipulating reality. And I was amazed the number of hands that went up were like, well, you know, if I've got to have a front page picture, I'm going to do it. And he's like, so let me tell you why that's a bad idea, because it makes the front page. And the kids around the kitchen table the next morning with his parents, the parents were like, wow, Johnny, it's great that you're on the front page. He's like, yeah, the photographer, like I was doing that, but the photographer, by the time the photographer wanted to do it, I wasn't doing it anymore, but he asked me to get back up and do it again. So the parents think to themselves, how much more of news is like a do-over, and how much more? And this was 20 years ago. This was pre-fake news. I mean, just be really careful of your role as a journalist. Keep that diary, but keep true to it. Don't ask them to do a do-over just because you missed it the first time.
Absolutely. That's good advice there, ladies and gentlemen. That is preaching to the choir. I don't know how many, I've said this a number of times. Why are photographers always so grumpy? We're all grumpy. Everyone's like, oh, I'm just a grumpy photographer. We're grumpy because we're perfectionists. And so many times I've been driving down the road chasing that moment, and you see it just like Charlie described. You see it, and by the time you grab that 300 off your seat, you park the car on the side of the road in a ditch, and you're running down the street, and you see the kid jump right out of the bail. You're like, oh man, I just missed it. And you just turn around dejected. And others may go up there and like, hey, do that again. No, I mean, a true journalist will just run, turn around, jump back in the car, and fight for another day. And that's what it's all about. There's so many nuances to that. If you cross that line, and so many photographers, I can start naming names, have been caught up in this trap and suddenly find that they no longer are employed by publications because someone called in and said, this is a great photo. Can I get a copy of it? The photographer had me do this 3 times and he finally got it. And suddenly that DOP says, let me get the full story here. And you got to be aware of that. So stay true. And we were speaking earlier about folks maybe not have these ethical values instilled to them from school or from internships yet. But there are values to be upheld here as journalists. Be mindful of that. Wow, that was a great conversation right there.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, just go talk to the kid and talk to the parents and come back. I've so many times I don't see people doing that, and so many times I don't do that. I'm like, probably should have talked to that person. And
talking.
I think the best thing is to just put yourself out there and just accept that you might get yelled at or someone tell you to screw off or something. But most of the cool stuff that I've found has come from chatting with people about something I wanted to chat about and finding out something completely different, which I'm sure most of you already know, but I wanted to hear myself say it. So.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely, in this world of publishing and photography, we always say it's all about relationships, and it really is relationships between the people we're photographing and ourselves, relationships between editors, photographers, writers, and we can all keep each other sort of on track if we keep talking.
You hear this every day. Carry your camera with you wherever you go. And, it sounds so cliche and so obvious, but do we do that? I don't. I should, because I see stuff all the time like, dang, I should have my camera with me. Yeah, I mean, keep your camera with you. And I went and had my car inspected yesterday to get the, the little safety sticker on your car. And this little garage is right down the street, and I'm standing there, and I don't want to stand inside. Why am I going to sit inside? it's cold out, but I'll stand outside, check my phone, and the part delivery person drives up in their van, and she's putting her mask on, and she's fumbling, and she has her mask halfway on, halfway off, and she's got her big part, a tiny woman, but she has a giant a muffler, and she's trying to get it out of her van to deliver it to the shop, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm on my phone, and I'm fumbling to get my phone going. And finally, she looks right at me. She's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, this is a remarkable photograph, and this is insane. I mean, I'm sorry, but you're having trouble, and I would love to help you, but I want to make this picture too." And she's like, "Oh, that's all right." And we ended up just having this conversation. And she's like, "You wouldn't believe how much trouble I have every day getting in and out of this van and trying to find the part. My mask's are on, it fogs up, and I'm falling, and I drop these parts." And I'm like, "Ah." And I got her number. And I'm like, "You know what? I'm going to go ride with you if you don't mind." And she's like, "Yeah, my boss won't care." I'm like, this is just me putting myself out there. And sure enough, I'll go do a story on the part delivery person from Maryland that, probably will crash into a tree because her glasses are fogging up because she has a mask on. Just put yourself out there. Make conversation part of your daily routine. It's hard to do. A lot of us just, want to be the fly on the wall, but that doesn't always, get you to where you want to go. Good conversation there. All right. Well, I don't know what time it is. What time are we at? 7:56, 8 o'clock. We're doing pretty good on our time. We had our Tuesday meeting where our team gets together and we have chats about the galleries and what we're going to do for the week. But Kathleen Curtis brought up some work that the paper, the Buffalo News, where she's the director of photography, is about ready to publish. And it's basically essays from photographers going out there and documenting how education and COVID-19 are affecting the community. And there's some good stories here. I'll have her relate these, but it's some amazing work. And we wanted to bring that out tonight and show it just to get some inspiration. And many of you are doing this, but this work is fantastic. And more so what the process of getting to that point of having photographers go out into the pandemic and make these projects happen is kind of what we were hoping to talk about a little bit more tonight. So we're going to let Kathleen take it from here and see where we go.
Great. Hi, everybody. So when we were talking about how we find people, so beginning of school here, many of my friends in the southern states, children had started school, and I started seeing on Facebook pictures of their kids crying under desks and being upset. And all right, I think we're about to share this. Hold on. And I got to thinking that it would be really interesting. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, ma'am.
We can.
All right. I got to thinking that, like we had some schools that were completely remote, some that were hybrid, some that were going back full time. So I asked 4 of my photographers to reach out and try to find some families. Some did it really easily, others struggled. This particular family, Sharon Cantillon, had done a story on a grandmother probably about 2 years ago, and she was struggling to find a family inside Buffalo City. So I mentioned to her, why don't you call your grandmother and see if she knows someone? And she suggested this family. So this is the Hardy family. They're completely remote. James, who's in the middle there, has autism. He has an older sister in high school, Brianna, and then a 2-year-old, Janelle. And Sharon just spent in between assignments, she will go to their house and spend time with them. This is James. The first day of school, he got up early, got dressed, and waited at the window for the bus to come, but the bus obviously never came. So we'll go through these pretty quickly because it's late. So he's wearing his backpack. He's excited. Does this thing where he spins to soothe himself, but also when he's really excited. Still waiting for the school bus. His first day of school, mom and James getting online with the teacher, dad in the background getting the baby ready for the day. This is while James is starting his day. This is his older sister running around keeping the baby active so that she won't bother James during class. Up close, This is Brianna had to go get her physical so she could even start school, even though it was online. So she's logging into her class from the doctor's office. And then I don't know about other communities, but in Buffalo, most of the students in the city, their computers either didn't work or didn't get hooked up, or they'd get kicked out of class. So there was a lot of frustrations. That's mom. Once she got into her class, the mom is so excited, reacting. This is mom talking to one of the teachers while the teenager sits on her bed, frustrated. And teenagers on her class in bed and yelling at her little brother to get the heck out of the room. So the hard part for this was we started shooting it early in the beginning of school, before school started. And it took a while. This is James having a meltdown because he couldn't handle the noise on the computer and he's outside covering his ears, screaming, which a lot of children are struggling with remote learning and the difficulty. This is the teacher comes once a week and drops off supplies to the house. But an interesting little legal discussion with the school because they said we couldn't use this photo, but they were wrong because they're on public property. And we asked the teacher and she said, sure, she didn't care. So we used the image. So I'll go rather quickly. So one of the things that I really drive home to my staff is get the details, the little pictures that might not mean anything, but when you're putting together a layout, they can look really nice, or they just add a little bit more information. I really feel like every picture should add one more layer to the story. This is a really loose edit, so I'll get to the layout. The layout wasn't quite, it's too many images on the layout for my opinion, but there was a lot to try to tell. This is the teenager and her mother fighting with the computer still, doing phys ed class on the Zoom call with their class. And then this was the front page. And then we went into a double truck for that was the first week of school. And then we're going to be going on, I'll go through it quickly, but this is now, we're breaking it into 4 parts. So this is the second part where their family's really starting to melt down. The kids are struggling. Mom is exhausted. In fact, the mom, we just found out yesterday, is in the hospital herself. They're just, it's a lot. Families are going through a lot, whether both families work or both parents are at home. It's really hard on the students and the parents and the teachers, and trying to show that can be, you can imagine the chaos if you're a teenager trying to learn when your little brother and sister are climbing on you. So this is when they were struggling most hardest, the teenagers starting to fail. Mom decided to just really change their routine, and they decided to get up every morning and go to the library as a family and sit at real desks, and rather trying to do it in bed or sit at the kitchen table. And the mom is also going to school herself to try to get more for the family and for herself. So she's studying, the kids are studying, but you'll notice that the kids start creeping closer to her at the library and asking her questions. So this is the teenager sort of stepping in and trying to keep the little siblings away from mom so she can work. And now we're just Sharon went back today to spend some time with the family now that the dad's doing everything while mom is in the hospital. I think we're almost done. Then we're done. So that's it. Happy to answer any questions. The hardest part, I always joke with this photographer that when she does a project like this now, she makes it really hard for me because it's hard when you get to this image, you know, do you use this image or that image? Because they're both really powerful and they're very similar. So you either have to, I always refer to it as killing the babies because you can't keep them all. So can be tough, but it's a lot of fun. And I think, you know, it's what we were saying earlier, and I got to get back so I can, we had this last time, Jack, where I couldn't get the on share from my screen. You might have to take back over for me.
Kathleen, can you speak to editing for print versus online? Because of course, online, you have infinite space, and in print,
absolutely. And Jack, if you can do away with my share, I can't seem to. Thank you. When I do it for print, it's probably because I have OCD. I will edit it down to a good number. You saw my loose edit before we got to the pages, final pages. I print out those 30 pictures and I lay them out. Well, now that I'm working from home, I lay them out on the kitchen counter and I just start looking at them and I say, well, this, if you've used this, then you can't use that. You know, like, and I start looking at what tells the story, what's the best overall, what's the best picture that shows emotion. In laying this out, I also tried to keep in mind, you don't want for there to be any implicit bias, or because this family is African-American, they live in a very small apartment in the inner city. The next family that we're doing is a very well-to-do white family in rural. So we just wanted to be very careful that it doesn't come across like this family, even though they're struggling, everybody's struggling. Like, it doesn't matter what socioeconomics you're from. It doesn't matter if you're in the rural or you're in the inner city. It's hard. It's hard on the parents and it's hard on the family. So when I was editing this one, I wanted to make sure in the first introduction of the Hardy family that they were likable. You know, I didn't want to just use all of the pictures of the mom looking exhausted. I wanted to really try to show the dynamics of the family, because one of the things that Sharon was telling me as she was shooting it, just how this family pulls together and supports each other, and the teenager will drop school to take over taking care of the baby so that her little brother can learn, and vice versa. So I really wanted to make that show. When I'm editing online, because online is very linear, you know, when you're doing it for print, it's a layout and you can make the pictures and the details all work. Online, because it's linear, you have to decide, are you going to tell the story in a linear fashion that just each image builds on the next image, or are you going to do it chronological? The danger of doing it chronological is that you can then end up with sometimes images that are either too similar next to each other, or you get 2 or 3 images that are like, they're storytelling, but they don't keep you engaged. So it's being online. The other thing I feel when you're telling a story online and it's linear is that the captions have to be narrative. They have to, like, words and pictures are never more important than they are online. I go and look at stories in other publications and in our publication, and if I'm looking at a picture and then another picture and you're not telling me why I care, I stop caring. Like, it doesn't matter how amazing the photo is. If you're leaving it up to me to decide, we're failing. We need to make sure we're giving our audience, our readers, and our subjects a fair shake in telling them as much as we can. And it's not like repeating what's in the picture. It's letting people understand, why is Janelle standing on the table? Like, and there's one picture further down below where the whole family was all together. The teenager, the little kid, and the mom were all studying right next to each other. And you'd have to go, why is that happening? It's because that's the only table in the entire house. There are no desks. They either sit at the dining room table or they sit on the couch or in bed. So just adding that narrative so that people can understand and be empathetic is really important.
Or that photograph of the young man basically screaming outside. It's not
Absolutely.
as apparent unless you have the caption saying he can't take it anymore. And a narrative caption beyond just the standard AP caption is so important. And it's not just that one image. You can create a narrative and a story through your captions in a creative way that will be a benefit. And Galen's great at this. Others are great at this. But create basically a narrative through your captions, another storyline.
You know, one of my
And if I can second what Kathleen said about
go ahead.
adding on, one thing that drives me crazy as a photo editor is just templated captions in every photograph. And then at the end, it's like Johnny ties his shoes because it's the first time he's learned how to tie his shoes. Do away with the templated. Take the time, if you're going to be a journalist, to put the important stuff first. Do not template every caption in a story and feel like you've done your job as a journalist. There's a reason that, you know, and this is cliche, but there's a reason that journalist is at the end of photojournalist. You folks are journalists as well as photographers.
Absolutely. There was one of the images, I don't know if you remember because we went through it pretty quickly, of him looking out the window waiting for the bus. I first saw the image when Sharon was sending me stuff from the first shoot, and I said, that's a really nice image. I love that. And in the caption, because she was editing them quickly and not really putting the full captions in while her and I were editing, she just said, James looks out the window. I'm like, okay. So then she started telling me that he gets up every morning at 5 a.m. and goes to the window and waits for the bus. And to me, that makes that image so much more sad. And you want, at that point, I wanted to know a lot more about James just from that one photo.
Yep.
What's been the reader reaction, Kathleen?
I've been so pleasantly surprised because like many publications, our readers tend to, anonymous readers tend to be awful. They say stupid things, and we talked about shutting the comments off for fear that we might have bad feedback. The feedback has been incredible. Everybody has written in about how, oh my goodness, this is my life. This feels what I'm doing. Well, the only thing you're missing is the children jumping in front of my work Zoom call, or the only thing we're missing is the cat crawling across their homework and ruining it. And in our next series, we're going to have some of that because the parents in the next series the dad works from home now. So he's, Zoom calling while teaching. So what we've done is we have this family, which is sort of all remote, struggling a little bit financially, and how they're dealing with it. I mean, they get up and walk to the library. Most of us could go and put our kids at the desk in the basement or in the spare bedroom. The next family, both parents work, but they do hybrid learning. So they have a really nice IKEA school set up in their basement. And then the third one is a private school that's all in class. So we're sort of struggling with that. Like, how does it change when mom and dad are at home, but the kids are going off to school? I've been pleasantly surprised at the number of readers have written to us and said, oh, you should come spend some time with us because this is how our life is different. But most of our families, all three of the ones that we have spent a good deal of time with, each of those families are the direct result of other assignments that the photographers had. And they would call up someone that they'd photographed and said, hey, I'm trying to do this project. Do you know a family? Oh yeah, I know about so-and-so. Or they'd, photographed a teacher and called the teacher and said, do you have a family that you think would be interesting? So, if you don't keep notes now and write phone numbers down, start tonight. Everybody on this call should know how to get a hold of all of us. And if you don't, you're doing yourself a disservice. You never know when you're going to be called by Time Magazine and say, hey, I want you to go to Buffalo and do a thing on Victorian houses. And guess what? You know somebody who lives in Buffalo. You know somebody who lives in Washington, D.C. You know someone who lives in Pennsylvania. Take advantage of it.
Kathleen, you said something really powerful when you were narrating that slideshow. It was like halfway through and you said, and here the mother decided to change the routine. And that really resonated with me. Anybody who's doing a long-term essay, that's the tipping point, right? Where
Yeah.
suddenly, you know, everything is like, yeah, mom gets up, dresses the kids, puts them in front of the, and then suddenly she's like, boom, we're gonna change stuff. You have to be alert to that. You have to, if you're mindful enough, you know, that makes so much difference, because suddenly it turned from all around the house and how are they dealing with their own stuff to, oh, we're going down the street. There's that transitional moment that is so important in an essay, because you're showing movement.
And I mean,
that to me, those were three powerful words that I wrote down and underlined. Change the routine.
and I think that's important for all of us, even in our day-to-day work. Like when we all do it, we all get in ruts. What do we have to do to change our routine? When we were talking earlier about, you know, story ideas and how do you come up with them during the COVID, read the obits. Go through your local newspaper and read the obits, and just read like some of the, one of the things that I've been working on getting, I'm not sure which photographer is going to, I have my staff now and I get ideas and it's like, I have this idea, they all put their finger on their nose to say not it, because it usually means work for them. But I think we just recently did an obit on a bar patron who was loved by everybody, went to this bar for 45 years, sat on the same stool. And I thought, how many places are like that person's missing? So let's go to that bar and photograph that bar with the empty bar stool. You know, we have another obit of a middle-aged woman who just passed away last week. She was a pastor in a small church in a little town. Let's go to the church, photograph the pulpit with the missing like, think of ways to show the things we can't necessarily see, but we feel. Like, what does loss feel like? How do you show that?
Absolutely there. That actually sums up the whole idea of what we're feeling and coping for the season. I think that get out there and find those spots and those people to make those pictures, to get that access, to be, you know, in your community. And you're all out there in different community areas across the country. So that's what's the important thing about this project, is that you are basically a you know, just far-reaching camera. It's out there pointing to your communities, and it all comes back to here, and we can post it in one place and have a dialogue with these images. And with Kathleen's images in that story, as a parent, what I was shocked by, and so like, whoa, this is what a public service that newspaper has done, is for me as a parent, I saw that image of the family going to the library, and I'm like, why am I not thinking of that in our daily life when we're struggling with our kids? That's a great idea. And take me away from a journalist. I'm looking at the newspaper as a parent. I'm like, wow, that's an option. And I think that's probably why that story is resonating so well at the Buffalo News, is that parents from all economic structures in every part of that society of Buffalo, they saw that and like, I can do that. Why am I not doing that?
Right.
Yeah, that's
You know,
fabulous.
and it's, you know, education in the US and probably the world, because of COVID, has changed. You know, you have parents protesting because they want their kids to go to school, and you have parents protesting because they don't want their kids to go to school. And it's a huge change in education. Maybe the biggest change since one-room schoolhouses.
I think all of you have seen the progression, and most of you have been with this project from the start or middle of coming into it. we were all out chasing the bright light, the rallies, the protests, the big events. And I think just looking at the work tonight and looking at the recent galleries we've had, it's finding those subtle, slow moving, quiet stories. Whitney's COVID wedding essay is a prime example of that. That was a beautiful little slice of life in Dayton, Ohio that resonates across the country. So yeah, find those moments, find those essays that you can spend the time and put your best foot forward. That's going to resonate.
If I can just build on that, we're trying to put a new gallery up in the next couple of days. So if you folks have any work that you've been sitting on that you haven't sent in, please, please, please send it in, because we need fresh images, and we really want to put a new gallery up there that showcases your work.
Yeah, especially like how were all of our Thanksgivings different this year? Like they were. We didn't have big mass gatherings, and we didn't pass the gravy and sample drinks. And how were they different? I'm sure.
Or if we did, what did that look like too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And face it,
We
we're all
had-
getting a little complacent. I think we're all just settling into this life that we're living right now with COVID and the pandemic. And some of us, and I'm, I'll point the finger at me. I'm just, going through life, but we have to just be diligent, get out there and do what we do and make great pictures of what's going on. So challenge
Well,
yourself.
Again, I'll go back to Kathleen's 3 words: change the routine, right?
Yeah. And that's hopefully something like this tonight will change your routine. It's changing mine. It's going to pump me up and get me out there to look for different ideas and go find a different Santa, go find, 2 or 3 Santas. I'm going to do a Santa trilogy. I don't know. I'm going to do something. So, we got to get ourselves out there.
Jack, I also think you're onto something with delivery people. I mean, there are so many people. I mean, Amazon and UPS are all hiring extra workers. What do those people look like who are struggling with their packages, delivering them to home after home? I mean, it's not just follow a Santa, it's follow an Amazon worker or follow
A lot of those workers are former workers. They were personal trainers.
Exactly.
They were chefs. They were dry cleaners. They were people whose jobs have disappeared.
Yep. And who did I see tonight who's going to do layoffs that it's just finally coming around? But yeah, there's going to be a lot of, it's that end of quarter, end of year situation at the holidays where a lot of companies do lay off normally, but now it's going to be
Bigger.
And the other thing to look for, 2 things are, I've seen where a lot of municipalities are purposefully leaning into the Charlie Brown kind of Christmas trees, just to kind of mark how weird 2020 is. But to go to a point that Kathleen made when she was presenting the essay, what do those details, what do some of those ornaments look like that are being hung on those trees? What kind of messages are people sending? What kind of personal stories are they signifying with the ornaments that are getting hung on municipal trees or their own trees for that matter?
Or those community trees that they put up in libraries and places like that, where you can go in and pull a name.
Exactly, yeah.
What's the request?
And how many are there this year?
Yeah.
The letters to Santa and all of that good stuff. The other thing that all of you should be thinking about is, I know here in New York, and I'm sure other places, hospital systems are calling their retired nurses back, their retired staff. What's it like? I mean, can we find a 62-year-old nurse who had retired to stay home with their grandkids who's going back? What's that mean for that person and that family? Like, there's a lot of families and older retired nurses and physicians who are going back into the front lines, and following one of them for a while would be a pretty powerful story.
We should bring Alex Edelman on the next one. He's been following basically an ambulance crew through a county for the last 6-7 months. He hops rides. Alex Edelman. He freelances here in DC, but he's a up and coming.
I'd like to
And-
see that.
It's another really good project to look about too. My son-in-law is the fireman in Miami-Dade. His fire hall right now is completely shut down because there aren't enough firemen to man the fire hall. 175 firemen out. That's in Miami-Dade. So it's got to be happening in other communities where, especially in smaller communities where the volunteer firemen, what's it like for them?
Yeah, I think if anyone here has a volunteer fire department, I think this is such a fantastic idea because a lot of them respond to medical calls if the county doesn't have a medical system and it's not their primary job. And I'd love to see somebody do that story. That'd be great.
And those volunteer fire halls also aren't doing the fundraising that they usually do. They're not having their meat raffles that they used to have. How are they being funded? Are they being funded?
I have a friend who was a little kid that lived next door to us when I was a teenager, and he used to be an undertaker. Then he became an assistant county coroner. Then he retired, sort of, and said he was going to do part-time embalming. And he's in Perry County, Indiana, is where he's at. He has handled every COVID case in a two or three county area this year as the undertaker of record that comes and gets the body if it's been COVID. 257 of them this year alone. Every COVID case in like a 2 or 3 county area he's handled. And I think it would be so wonderful to get him to write about that and just make a nice portrait of it.
Yeah, good
You
idea.
know, it's kind of strong kind of image to think that this guy has seen that in a rural community. He virtually knows all these people that he goes and picks up.
Well, we're doing pretty good on time. We actually set right to our schedule tonight. That's pretty amazing. What do you guys think? Is there any questions or any more comments you want to throw out there? Let us have them. Again, the comment of reaching out to anyone here at any time is open. The door is open, so take advantage of it. The points to really, I guess, come to conclusion here. Keep submitting. Like when we've honed in on that all this hour and a half. Just get out there and keep submitting your work and get it into the hands of the editors here, and let's get it up and let's get it out there. Another thing we haven't been really hitting on too hard is, recruit other folks from your circles, from school who aren't at school or others. Put this out there and tell them to get on board with this thing, because the folks that you are around at school but are now dispersed, that's perfect for this program, this project. They're out in different counties, different states. Get them involved. So push to recruit somebody. Change things up, and every day recruit somebody. Get somebody in your circle. Get them in here. Come on. Captions. The big deal is captions. And I think the one thing we learned tonight is the narrative of the caption and how important that is. And it's hard to do if you haven't edited your story out or your essay out. How's that narrative going to flow? And you have 100 images, and how do I have a narrative, caption in every one of these? And it's tough. You may not be able to do it, but at least those big, poignant, oh wow, images that you have, put some extra effort into your caption on those and tell the story. And if you look at a photo and you just don't know what it's saying, would people know what this is? Add that caption information to it. Go ahead, Molly, you're going to say something.
I was just going to say, once you have your final sequence, you need to tweak your captions. You can't just necessarily stick with the captions that you originally wrote. They have to make sense in the sequence. And so that's a whole nother step that sometimes is forgotten.
Absolutely. And spell check. Yeah. I end up I end up using a Word program. I don't write my captions in Photo Mechanic. I use a Word program, and so I type my paragraphs, and then I'm the spell checking, and I use whatever that Grammarly, and it tells you when you're not. You guys hear me speak. I am not a proficient speaker. I mean, prolific, no. And when I'm writing, I'm the same way. And suddenly my writing looks a lot better because Grammarly is kicked in. So, you know, use the tools, use the tools. Yeah, and if you're still looking back on your work from the past year, get that stuff in too, because it would be valuable. It would be really valuable. Think of the seasons coming up. Just keep submitting work, submitting essays, coming up with story ideas, and this thing is continuing on. Be careful out there because the numbers are ticking up. We all are aware of that, and
Wear your mask. Oh, sorry.
it's going to be an ugly, ugly winter. Go
I
ahead.
gotta
Mike.
go. Take care.
All right, Mike. Thank you.
Michael.
That's all. Bye-bye.
So yeah, the numbers are kicking up. So that's the last thing we'll leave you guys with is just be safe and be careful. But get out there. I hope everybody enjoyed the evening. I did. I didn't have to speak, and you guys didn't have to listen to me speak tonight. So great. It's a win-win for everyone.
Remember, get your pictures in for the gallery.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Great seeing everyone.
Thanks for joining, everybody.
Thanks, Kathleen. That was a wonderful presentation.
I'm going to
That's
stick
really
around for a
great.
few minutes. I'm going to talk to some folks who want to chat. So I'm going to stick on here, but I'm going to stop the recording. But I'll be around. I'm going to keep this going.